Well, hi. I didn't see you there. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to go through a few things, like some rhythm essentials, and we're going to talk about counting. And we're just going to have a happy little time with our happy little violin and bow. Well, if you're wondering why I'm talking like this, there's a fellow named Bob Ross, and he's quite popular, and he has a very soft and very pleasant voice and delivery. And we're going to do that today just for fun. Now, today, I'm going to be Josh Ross, your guide to counting, all right? And I've got a little bit of guide on the paper here, and we're going to show that in just a second. So if you will, just indulge me, have a good time. Hopefully the noise around us won't be too loud, and you'll be able to hear what I have to say. If not, just yell at me in the comment section. It's not a problem. We're just having a laugh here, all right? Sorry, I don't have the right hair, but, you know, these are new days and new times. Maybe Bob might have liked my hairstyle. I don't know. At any rate, we're going to get started here. And I'm going to go through just a couple of notes I've made. I'm going to start talking about the staff. Now, the staff is made up of 5 lines in 4 spaces. And this is what we're talking about right here. The 5 lines and the 4 spaces of the staff. All right? Now, without the staff, you're not going to be able to count. You're not going to be able to make any rhythm or timing at all. And that's why we have to have it. Now, the next thing we're going to need is the clef. Now, the clef, it looks like this for violinists and for guitarists as well. But it doesn't look that way for bass guitar players and for drummers, which are some of the other instruments that we teach here. You're going to need the clef to tell you exactly which letters the lines and the spaces are on your staff. Next thing you're going to want is the time signature. That's a very important time signature, has numbers. And I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. And this is it right here. This is very important as well. Now, as you can see, that has a 4/4 time signature right there. Now, that 4/4 time signature has a meaning. And I'm going to put it in a sentence for you right now, okay? It may not make total sense, but hopefully it will by the time we're done here today. Now, 4/4, the top number stands for how many beats are in a measure. The bottom number stands for what gets the beat, okay? Now, there's no easy way to remember what the bottom number is or what it stands for, so I'm just going to tell you. The 4 on the bottom means the quarter note. So if we read it like a sentence, you have 4 quarter notes in a measure. 4 quarter notes in a measure. Hopefully that helped you. Now, the next thing we're going to need to know is about a bar line. Now, a bar line breaks up a measure, and it breaks up music as well. If you don't have bar lines, all you're going to have is just a bunch of notes rolling along together. Just one giant song with a bunch of notes, never stopping. Now, that's no way to tell what timing and rhythm is going to do for you. And that's why we have bar lines, because we got to know when those 4 quarter notes are done. And that's where we put a bar line. So we'll just go over here and we'll put a happy little bar line in that music right there. And that little bar line is going to help you tell when those quarter notes are done. Now, if there's not 4 quarter notes in the measure, well, buddy, we got a problem, don't we? Yeah, we do. That can happen at the beginning and the end of a song, though. Those are called incomplete measures. Now, here's the thing. You don't want incomplete measures in the middle of a song, generally speaking. And if that happens, you need to ask your teacher about it, or maybe your conductor if you're in an orchestra, because there may be a mistake. I've had that before. Other people have had that before. And you're going to come across it at some point in your musical career. So it's important to know and be aware that that could happen. Now, the next thing you're going to want to learn is about measures. Now, these measures look like this, okay? Now, this measure right here, notice it has 2 bar lines. 2 bar lines, okay? Now, those bar lines are going to bookend your quarter notes or your eighth notes. That all depends on your time signature, really. But you should know that the numbers that make up your time signature are going to be inside of those 2 bar lines, right inside, like just a happy little group of notes right there. Moving on, you're going to see something called a double bar line. All right. Now that double bar line, plain and simple, looks just like this right here. Notice that they're two very thin lines. Now, that double bar line does not mean the end of the song. Usually it means something like the end of a phrase or the end of a section, okay? What you're going to need to see for the song to be over is a thick black line and a thin black line. And that's going to tell you that the song is done. Finito, end of the road. And that's when you can be ready to stop, all right? Now, the next thing you're going to need is you're going to need to know the types of notes that you're going to play in sheet music. Now, remember, what we're talking about here today is Western music. This is music that we typically play on sheet music in what we call the Western tradition. Now, this goes all the way back before people like Beethoven, Mozart, and Bach, even before that. It's a very long time ago, but we have to know exactly what the notes are and how long they last. More on that in a second, because there's a little bit of a caveat there for how long a note lasts. We'll talk about that soon. First, let's talk about what the note values are. Remember that word, value. Note value. What is value? It's what something is worth or how long it lasts. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Now I'm going to point you to the bottom of this page where we have this wonderful little chart here. This wonderful little chart shows you what these notes look like. Now this is a whole note. A whole note gets 4 beats or 4 counts. A whole note gets 4 beats or 4 counts, okay? It can also represent 4 quarter notes. Now this is a half note. A half note gets 2 beats or 2 counts. Now I want you to notice that underneath the whole note, it's showing us that there are 2 half notes inside of every whole note, all right? Now that is true, and it's going to add up to 2 beats in each half note. 2 beats in each half note, all right? That adds up to 4 notes in this whole note. Now, if we come down here, we're going to see that a half note equals 2 quarter notes. And this is what a quarter note looks like right here. It's a filled-in head with a stem, and there's 2 quarter notes in each half note. Well, if we know there's 2 half notes inside of every whole note, and there's 2 quarter notes inside of every half note, that means there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes inside of a whole note. See how I did that right there? Isn't that a neat little trick? 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes inside of a whole note. Okay? Yeah, that's a nifty little trick right there. Now from here, we're going to do something called division. Okay? Now, not like the division you've done in math class, although it is kind of similar. But division just simply means that we're going to divide the quarter notes into eighth notes. Okay? Divide the quarter notes into eighth notes. Okay? Now notice there's 2 eighth notes inside of every quarter note. There's 2 eighth notes inside of every quarter note. Now you'll know they're eighth notes because not only do they have a filled-in head and a stem, but they've got a beam connecting them. A beam connecting them. All right? Now, this can take the form of a flag as well. But a flag only exists on an eighth note if there's no other eighth notes around. It's a lonely little eighth note if there's no other eighth notes around, so it only has a flag. It's looking for a friend. And when it gets one, it'll have a beam. Now, the beam can connect multiple eighth notes, but for simplicity's sake in this book, they've just grouped them into 2. Now, why is that? Well, that's to more easily show you that quarter notes are made up of 2 eighth notes. Now, if you'll notice, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 eighth notes in a row here. Wait a minute. Are we seeing a trend? I think we are, and it's a happy little trend. There are 8 eighth notes in a whole note, and that's why they're called eighth notes, because everything references back to the whole note. So half notes, there's only 2. What's a half note equal? 1 over 2, half. There's 2 half notes in a whole note. There's 4 quarter notes, 1 over 4 quarter notes in a whole note. And there's 8 eighth notes in a whole note. See how that works out? Pretty cool, isn't it? Well, I bet you can guess exactly what we're going to do next. Yep, you're right. We're going to do 16th notes next. Okay? Now, I bet you if we count them, it would add up to 16. Let's try it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Well, what do you know? It did. It all worked out. Now let's reference what we just learned. There's going to be 16 16th notes in one whole note. And it works out, doesn't it? Because we just added it all up. Now, how do you differentiate between 16th notes and 8th notes? Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. Well, 16th notes are going to have the same pattern. They're going to have a filled-in head and a stem, but instead of just one beam like an 8th note, they're going to have two beams right here, okay? Now, we've connected multiple 16th notes with beams, and that's because they've got a bunch of friends, don't they? Here's a bunch of 16th notes all in a row right there. Now, if there was only one little 16th note, well, again, he'd be a lonely little 16th note, but it wouldn't be a beam anymore. It would be two flags, and they would come off the stem, and they would be nice and wavy, just like their little old flag buddies up here on the 8th note would be, right? Now, let's go back 1 second because I want to make sure we understand this fully. They've broken this down for us to look at, and I want you to know that in every 8th note, there are two 16th notes. In every 8th note, there are two 16th notes, okay? That means there are 4 16th notes in a quarter note. 4 16th notes in a quarter note, right? And that means if we go up here to the half note, we're going to have 8 16th notes in a half note. And then we're going to have 16 16th notes in a whole note. So just remember, friends, everything goes back and references the whole note. Excuse me, I almost said half note there, didn't I? Well, I meant whole note, okay? So it all goes back and it references the whole note. And that's how you know exactly where you are and the duration of a note, okay? It's important to know this, and feel free to come back and reference this video. It'll be up on the YouTube channel again later. All right. Well, now that we've talked about notes and their values, let's go along and let me look at my notes, and let's talk about one very important subject matter, and that is the metronome. Yes, I know. I know the metronome is not the favorite thing of the musician. However, it is very important, and I'm going to tell you why. Well, first, if I'm playing by myself, sure, I can play without a metronome, and I'd be a happy little clam, wouldn't I? That'd be fine. But here's the thing. Songs really need to have rhythm. They really need to have a plan. And that metronome gives us a plan. It gives us a timeline to follow, right? So I'm going to mimic the metronome right now. You ready? Right? That's a happy little click. And it's happening all at the same interval, right? Let's say, and I'm making it up, let's say that equals a half a second every click, right? Well, it happens at the same interval every time, all right? Now that metronome is going to keep you on time. But wait a minute, we've got a problem. What does that click actually equal? Well, that's where you and I have to make some decisions. Yeah, we've got to make some decisions. Well, what is that click going to equal? Well, it can equal any of these notes that we want it to be. But here's the thing. We want to make sure we make the right decisions. So when you have a click, when you have a metronome, I want you to start by making the metronome equal to the quarter note, okay? Make the metronome equal to the quarter note, and you can start counting from there. Now, if you need to subdivide, you can go to eighth notes. I'm sorry, divide, not subdivide. Let me rephrase that. If you need to divide, you go to eighth notes. And if you need to subdivide, you go to 16th notes. Or guess what? If you need to go to half notes, you can add 2 quarter notes together. If you need to go to a whole note, you can add 4 quarter notes together. Do you see why it's very advantageous to set the metronome to a quarter note to start off with? And a lot of times the time signature, like we discussed earlier, is going to tell you that there are 4 quarter notes in a measure. Now, there could be 3 quarter notes, there could be 6/8 notes. And if that's the case, and it's not a quarter note as your time signature, then you can make a decision to say that your metronome click equals an eighth note. Okay? Now, if that's the case, I would slow down your metronome just a little bit. A good place to start would be 60 beats per minute, and you can go slower or faster depending on the speed and depending on the note value you're using. Remember, the larger the value of the note, the slower your metronome's going to need to be if you're just starting out learning a song. Okay? Now, sometimes I do like to set the metronome to equal a smaller note, like perhaps an eighth note or a 16th note. But a lot of times I'll speed the metronome up a little bit. And the reason I do that is because having the metronome click equal a shorter note, we call it a shorter duration. It's probably the best word we're going to use for this. Having it equal a shorter note is going to allow me to better keep track of what note I'm on as long as I take the music slowly. All right? So those are just a couple of tips and suggestions that I have for you. Let me know in the comments section if you like this or if it helped you out. And I got this suggestion today because, well, I guess the the gig's up here, and I'm not really Bob Ross, am I? I don't even have hair that really looks like him, and my name is not really Josh Ross, although it is Josh. But a student today suggested that I do something because we were cracking jokes, and Bob Ross came up, and well, he's just such a relaxing individual, and he's so much fun to watch on YouTube or the old videos. I used to watch them when I was a kid, and learning how to paint is a lot of fun, and painting is an art form, just like music is an art form. So I decided we just have a little fun today and talk about some rhythm and some timing, which is a topic that I really wanted to do and have been wanting to do for quite some time now. So at the end of the day, I just want you to be happy little musicians and happy little folks having some fun and making the music that you like. And hopefully this guide and these helpful tips and hints are going to set you down that path to be able to do it. Well, if you got any questions or if you think there's anything I missed, please go ahead and feel free and make a comment in the comment section and share this with your friends and family. And I'll be making another video later celebrating our 1,000 subscribers. And thank you everybody for tuning in and coming to this and watching. And we're so happy that we could help you all grow and become better and become more knowledgeable in your music and in your journey. Well, we'll see you soon. Have a great evening. And hopefully you could hear this. Hopefully my voice wasn't too low. I apologize if it was. And well, maybe I won't have too many jokes like this in the future. But you guys have a great evening, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye now.